Demet still remembers that night as if it were carved into her memory. She was sitting alone in her dimly lit room, the soft glow of her phone the only light that kept her company. Her hands were restless, scrolling aimlessly through old conversations, as if searching for something she couldn't name. And then, suddenly, her breath caught. There it was. A message she was never meant to see. Her eyes locked on the screen. The words were clear, written with hesitation but overflowing with emotion. "I still love you." For a second, her heart leapt, as if time itself had reversed. But then she noticed the cruel truth. Right beneath those words, a small note, a reminder of what never was, not sent crossmark. Demet froze. The message existed, but it had never been delivered. It was a confession locked in silence, words typed in desperation yet buried in fear. And in that moment, she felt an invisible dagger pierce her chest. Because this was not just a message. It was the answer to questions she had carried for years. He wrote it, but he never sent it, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. As the room grew quieter, memories of that night came rushing back. What would have happened if she had received it? Would her life look different today? Would the story of Demet and Can have ended the way it did, or would it have never ended at all? The haunting power of an unsent message lingers, because sometimes, silence speaks louder than any word ever could. There was a night neither of them would forget. A red carpet event had ended, the music had thinned into the kind of silence that only late hours can hold, and the hotel lobby smelled faintly of cologne and rain. Can lingered by a marble pillar with his phone in his hand, the screen lighting his face in pale blue. He typed, paused, deleted, typed again. His thumb hovered over send the way a diver hesitates at the edge of the board, knowing one motion could change everything. He wrote what he had never dared to say out loud, "I still love you. I never stopped." On the surface, two simple sentences. Beneath them, years of unfinished conversations, interrupted calls, unasked questions, and a promise that always seemed a second too late. He breathed in, breathed out, and stared at the words, as if waiting for permission from the universe. A bell chimed somewhere. A door closed. A friend called his name from across the lobby. Ken glanced up, then back at the phone. Reason rushed in, public eyes, headlines waiting to be born, the fear that what he felt was just nostalgia wearing a familiar face. He selected the text, wavered, and let his thumb lift away. The message stayed, ghost-like, in that tiny white box. Demet would later replay that night in her mind like a scene from a film, frame by frame, heartbeat by heartbeat. She remembered the way he looked at her, the almost smile that never quite reached his eyes. She didn't know then what trembled on his screen, but she felt it in the air, something about to happen, and then not happening. Weeks later, a friend shared a short video from that same lobby, careless, grainy, background conversation and lights blurring into gold. Demet paused the clip and zoomed in without thinking. For a split second, the reflection of Can's screen caught a glare from the chandelier. It shouldn't have been legible, not at that angle, not from that distance. And yet, there it was, letters she could recognize even if the universe tried to hide them, "I still love you." Underneath, the tiniest system whisper, unforgiving and cold, not sent. Her breath hitched as if the world had tricked her, giving proof and denying it in the same instant. She watched the 7-second clip 10 times, then 20. The message existed, a bridge built across their distance, but it never carried them to each other. Time moved forward, as time always does, pretending to heal what it only learns to hide. Demet poured herself into work, into scripts and scenes and endless days where makeup rooms felt like waiting rooms for lives she was not living. In the quiet hours she would touch the frame of a window and imagine a different city on the other side, a different version of herself walking there, one who had read those words when they mattered. "I still love you." How powerful, how dangerous, how simple. She turned the sentence over in her mind like a smooth stone worn by the tide. It wasn't proof that everything would have worked. It wasn't a promise that what broke could be fixed without scars. But it was a signal, a light in a window on a dark street, saying, "There is still someone awake for you." She drafted replies she would never send to a message she never received. I waited for you at 2:17. I would have come down to the lobby. I would have listened. She wondered if Can had hovered, too. Typing, deleting, wondering if she would laugh at him, or cry, or worse, forgive him. Maybe that frightened him most, not rejection, but hope. Because hope creates responsibility, and responsibility can feel heavier than regret. One evening, months after the night of the unsent words, they crossed paths at an industry dinner. The air between them felt warm with ghosts. They spoke politely at first, the neutral phrases of people who remember everything and admit nothing. Then came the long pauses, the way eyes tell the truth mouths refuse to speak. Demet could have asked, "Why didn't you send it?" But to ask would be to confess she knew. To confess she knew would be to admit that something inside her still waited by that window. The closest Can came to telling the truth was not on camera, and not to Demet. It was to a friend he'd known before any of this was loud, before the interviews and the rumors and the relentless commentary. They sat on a rooftop, the city glittering like a jewelry box left open by mistake. The friend didn't push. He only asked, "If you could send one message you didn't send, what would it be?" Can stared at the horizon and answered without hesitation. "I still love you. I never stopped." The words left his mouth like something finally exhaled after holding one's breath too long. "I thought I was protecting us by staying quiet. I told myself the timing was wrong. That if I waited, we could start again without the storm. But every time I waited, the distance grew teeth." Across town, Demet confessed to a confidant, "I saw it. Not sent." Those exact words. "And what would you have said if it had arrived?" the friend asked. Demet closed her eyes. "I would have asked him to come. Not to explain everything, there are things you can only repair in silence and time, but to sit with me and admit that we both broke it. I would have said that love is not proof against fear, but it deserves a chance against it." The night held both confessions separately, as if it feared what might happen if they touched. Maybe it would have been a miracle. Maybe it would have been a mess. The not knowing was the heaviest part, heavier even than grief. Because grief knows what it has lost. Uncertainty asks you to keep carrying the weight of what-ifs. There is a kind of courage that looks like action, and there is a kind that looks like admission. Demet learned the second kind the hard way. On a quiet morning she opened her notebook again, the page with the sentence waiting like an old friend, "I saw the message he wrote, but he never sent it." She read it once and did not cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the hurt had finally found a place to sit. She thought about the math of moments, how many seconds pass between a typed word and a sent one, and how entire lives can fit into that thin sliver of time. She thought about two people in a lobby, the consolation of a phone screen, the arrogance of believing that hearts will wait forever without being asked to. Can stood at his window, phone heavy in his hand, the thread open to that same blankness. He typed, "I hope you're well." It was small, timid, almost useless, yet more than nothing. He didn't send it. He deleted it. He typed, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." He didn't send that either. Then, with a kind of tired bravery, he typed the only version that was honest and unadorned, "I should have sent this a long time ago, I still love you." He watched the cursor blink like a heartbeat. He could feel the city behind him, the past at his back, the future waiting without promises. Somewhere else, Demet traced the groove of the pen marks she had pressed into that notebook page. She whispered to no one in particular, "I would have answered." Not with certainty, not with guarantees, but with the courage to try. If this were a love story written for television, you might cue the music and make someone run through the rain. Life is rarely that generous with gestures. But sometimes it offers smaller mercies, the chance to be honest with yourself, the strength to forgive the person you were when you were afraid, the wisdom to learn that feelings unspoken become memories that hurt. Demet left the apartment and stepped into the morning, no fanfare, no last-minute message lighting her screen. Can stood at his window a minute longer, then finally put the phone down and allowed the silence to mean what it meant. There will always be a universe where he pressed send, where a phone lit up at 2:17 a.m., where footsteps hurried toward a lobby and two people remembered how to meet each other halfway. And there is this universe, where she wrote a sentence in a notebook and he carried a sentence in his chest. Both kinds of endings are true to someone. Both can be lived with. Some words can change everything, but only if they are spoken,